Yo guys, what's going on? It's me, Evan, Team Into One for Game. We're back with another deck profile. I really enjoy doing these. And today, I wanted to, instead of doing Sword and Shield, we wanted to look at some expanded content. I think expanded is kind of boofy. Everyone's got their opinions, but I had a League Cup, so I had to run something. And I noticed in Japan that they had a little Sableye doll stall thing. But obviously there's banned cards in that, so I had to make my own list. And I am not a rich boy, so I don't have PokeBeach articles anymore, so I didn't even read Grant's list or what anybody else did. So I kind of just end up doing my own thing for this. I don't know how similar this is. Hope maybe it's similar to other lists. But this is what I ran to make the easiest top 8 of my life at a League Cup. And if the rules weren't the rules, basically I would have beaten my top 8 opponent and then destroyed my top 4 opponent and then destroyed my finals opponent because they were like auto win matchups. The top 8 I went against my teammate. But you'll see that in another video and you'll see why I lost. And I think we explain it in the video why I lost. But I'll go over the deck first, and then I guess I'll give the rundown. The rundown isn't really that anything special, but one deck that people have been murmuring about and that's been doing okay. I don't think it's had any big finishes in the expanded format. Dallas is actually coming tomorrow, so I don't think this video will be out by the time, so it'll be kind of like a looking back video, or maybe if you still got expanded cups before Sword and Shield come out, definitely give this deck a look. But I wasn't too concerned about that because this deck isn't available for everyone, and I guess I apologize for that coming into this, but I have a little bit of insight about the deck, and maybe if you're looking to beat the deck, I can definitely help you out with that in this video. But what we're looking at today is Oranguru Doll Stall. Guru, notorious for being able to infinitely loop cards over and over again. Yeah, that's all it does. It's just get you back cards. I'm also running one Sableye. He also gets you back cards. So originally I actually started out with the 4 Sableye or 3 Sableye like the Japanese list did. But when I was solitaring, I didn't put any testing in this. I just walked in and did well. I'm kind of, I guess I guess I get in trouble for that a lot. Not really testing exactly some lists. I do test most lists, but something like this, I just walked into the room and did well. But you know, I figured out pretty fast that Oranguru is kind of better than Sableye. But there are some key situations where Sableye I needed Sableye in some situations. And in my match against Rob in top 8, I do utilize Sableye to set me up to win the game. But you'll see that in the video when it comes, or whatever order we decide to put them out. I got a Bunnelby to double burrow, or also if I need another way to shuffle in. Since this card is older and lesser known, I'll go over it real fast. Omega Barrage lets it attack twice. If you know about Primal Groudon, It's similar to having those kinds of things. But Burrow discards the top card of your opponent's deck. Rototiller puts back a card from your discard pile. It's really simple. It's not too much to add. It just does what it does. Girafarig, get lost. If you hammer Team Flare Grunt, or there's something you want to get rid of, or you trick shovel, handiwork, whatever, and you find something that you want to get lost, it just gives you that option to remove something from the game. I didn't use it that often. It's only in certain case and scenario. Next card we got Mimikyu. Impersonation. This card won me the game against Rob. You can pull since Surge got banned, you want to be able to play Belba and Bryson Man or Team Rocket's Handiwork. You can do it twice with Versus Seeker. You can also do it with Flare Grunt to catch up on the overall board position. There's a lot. It's really interesting how we found out that you can use Mimikyu to make up for Surge. No, I'm skipping over. That's all for the Pokemon, but for the overall, now we got Dullstall. Yeah, this is Dullstall. Unlike Standard, we now have Robo Substitute. So now we got 8 dolls that basically say you can't take a prize on them. This is like a hybrid stall control. There's not a lot of options for control because Surge got banned and it's kind of rough for control. But with dolls, you kind of just let things run down. And there's certain scenarios where you can get an infinite lock going and your opponent just needs to scoop. That's the biggest thing about this deck, is that you're either just going to win or you're going to lose. If your opponent has an answer, then you're going to lose. That's only true in certain scenarios, though. If you're good enough, this deck is pretty big brain. There's a lot of decision making, especially in the early turns, because you can get really messed up in the early turns. And if your opponent is like aggressive enough, especially with Turbo Dark, and you'll see that in the top 8 video, where I have to play a lot smarter. Top 8 was definitely the hardest match. All my other matches were just like scoops. But I'll get into that later. For the overall deck, we've got some supporters there. Our main draw is like going to be greens and clays. Greens ensures that you don't get Daunt and gets you your beaches. We got 4 tropical beaches. Get good if you don't have them. Sorry, not my problem. Just deal with it if you don't have them. There's no substitutes. This isn't like garbage shock lock. There's no way around not having Tropical Beach. It's kind of pay to win. But it's funny how even if you buy the beaches, you might not even win with this deck. So it's kind of big brain. So just deal with it. That's all I can tell you. Some more Team Flare Grunt. They get rid of your opponent's garbage. And your opponent might not like it, but Faba does the same thing pretty much. Gets rid of special energy and puts it in a lost zone. Definitely for Zoroark matchup. Pretty simple. Ranger for Toad because you just lose. You got Faba and Flare Grunt to deal with that, but you know the thing. Gladion, you'll prize stuff and you'll feel bad. If you prize Bellaba and Bryson Man, you'll feel bad, so you want to get back with Gladion. If you prize too many dolls, you'll want to get it back. I'm kind of jumping around here, but I also forgot to mention like the more important draw supporter, Clay. Discard top 7. If any of those are items, put them in your hand. I got like 4 out of 7 items every single Clays, even in the early game. This whole deck is pretty much items with like, we've got our Trick Shovels, Mills, the top card, Nest Ball, gets you a Pokemon. We got 4 Versus Seeker coming up. I know this is kind of like messy, I'll organize it as I go, but 4 Versus Seeker obviously gets you your garbage back, so you can go for like double Mimikyu play. Yeah, that's pretty much all it is to Versus Seeker. The big Wombo combo that I like to pull off with Hugh, if your opponent knows that you're playing Dullstall and they're just going to stall you out, then you can be aggressive on discards and with like trick shovels and Mimikyu and all that big stuff. But if your opponent just wants to keep draw passing, then you just hew them and they just kind of cry. One thing you used to be able to do with stall decks is like draw pass, and then N or Cynthia or something like that to shuffle them back in the deck. So you have Hugh to kind of just say no. Afterwards, I looked at other lists and they were playing like Durant. That's an option. I kind of just would rather Hugh and use an actually good attack. Like I don't really understand why you'd use a whole Pokemon when you could just use a supporter to do the exact same thing. So now we got more items. Professor's Letter lets you search for energies. All we're running is 4 basic darks. That's literally it. All of your Pokemon can use it. Oranguru, Bunnelby, Mimikyu, and Girafarig are colorless and Sableye dark. That's literally the only reason we're running dark. And Professor's Letter can be searched through clay or greens, and you can get them. Energy Retrieval. If you burn through stuff with like clay and stuff, you can just get energies right back with Energy Retrieval. It's nice because it's better than Super Rod. I do have Super Rod as an option, basically in case it gets lost zoned or prized. Energy Retrieval is nicer because it puts it right back in your hand rather than in the deck. Now for pretty much the rest of the deck, everything is like consistency stuff. Like so, for Verse Seeker, clays, greens, clay, green. We've got our dolls. We got our Pokemon. We've got our searching and recovery. We've got the dolls. We got Hugh, Gladians, Ranger, Faba, Handiwork, Flagrant, Bellaba, and Bryson Man. And then now we've got our supporters. It's better laid out for y'all. But now is when we get to like the nitty gritty of the deck. Now that we got all that stuff, the big interaction with this deck is with Rescue Scarf. And that's, you basically just slap it on a doll, and then instead of having it go to the discard pile, Rescue Scarf bounces it back into the hand. You might not know the card because it's back from Dragon's Exalted, I believe. So it's pretty old and uncommon, so I don't blame you if you don't know it. If you go against this, you'll probably have to read the card. But it works for things like Ditto and Pokédoll. I would rather use the Scarf to put the doll back in the hand than use Oranguru or Sableye. And the reason that is because we can use Eco Arm in Lena's Fishing Rod. Lena's gets a Pokemon, as you know, and a tool. But Eco Arm, you really never see this card. You shuffle 3 Pokemon tools back into your deck. So you've got all these scarves, and you've also got our ace spec of the deck, Life Dew, and we've also got Adventure Bag. So basically we can shuffle them all back with Eco Arm, and then we can Adventure Bag them to easily search them back out. So you get to this point where you cycle, and you just do it over and over and over and over again, and your opponent can't win. So, on the surface level, that's all there is to this deck, is milling and bouncing, over and over again. If you want to talk about matchups, I went 3-1-1 in Swiss. My first round opponent, I think he was newer. He was running a Pikarom deck, but he definitely really didn't know what I was doing at first, and he was like, I guess, like, since I had beaches and, like, rescue scarves and stuff, maybe for like more casual players you definitely get like intimidated or just shocked by it. It's funny because as I was going through the deck with greens, the players beside me took note. They're like, "Oh my gosh, he's playing beaches," and yeah, you really need greens into beach into doll, because a lot of times you're gonna end the turn with doll in the active, and you want to be doing something with like your stadium. It's I have talking about the four beaches. It's less of you need four beaches to keep them in play, and more so you need to like start the game with them. Like the install decks, like Shocklock in this, Tropical Beach is so important. It's like there's no replacement for it, and you need to start the game with it to get that early setup. Because if you don't, you're not gonna stabilize the game, especially without Surge. Like now that Surge is gone, it's so much harder to stabilize. Um, but some matchups like Pikarom, they might be able to overwhelm you, but he couldn't, and I know the matchup, and I kind of just bodied him. And he really got to a point where it's like, I'm going to just destroy you, and he just scooped. You might be kind of wondering, like, hey, this is a stall deck. How do you make top 8 with stall? Well, I've also topped 8 with Sable Garb, and I made top 4 with the Spear Tomb deck that I made. So I've made top at cups multiple times. So I'm used to like playing fast paced and beating my opponents in a best of one setting. So if you're kind of new, this deck really isn't for you. This is more like advanced and for people who have beaches. But even if you don't have beaches, the things that you can take note from this deck is like what I'm running and some ideas that I'm running. And I talk about like how to beat this deck. Mainly like being aggro. It seems weird, but sometimes it seems like it's impossible to win. But when you play with the deck, there's like sometimes where you're not doing that well, and if your opponent like has this illusion that you're like unbeatable and that you're doing amazing, like I've got everything I need. Um, Sometimes you might seem like that with a Zoroark deck because they have so many cards in their hand, and it might seem like this too. Like, I have a billion cards, I have like 10 cards in my hand, and I can't take any knockouts. What am I supposed to do? Well, sometimes I don't have a good hand, and if you go aggressive on the right turns, then you can just win. Um, Getting donked is kind of a little scary. You really need to start with clay, greens, or beach. But if I start with another Pokemon, I'm pretty comfortable. Um, but it is very realistic to just get stomped on the first turn. What else? So Pika can kind of do that, especially with Tag Bolt. So one weakness is like sniping. Being able to double kill dolls is kind of frustrating, but with the Pikarom deck in round 1, he can only tag bolt once, and once he did that, I knew I was gonna win the game. Like there was just nothing he could do. Uh, so round 2, I went against a unique deck that they said they were testing the deck for potentially Dallas. So I wouldn't leak, but by the time this comes out, it'll already be too late. But they're basically, in terms of how this matchup goes, it was impossible for them to win. They were going with the mindset that they can destroy like Turbo Dark and thing. It was a deck that like hard counters like GXs and EXs and stuff. But if it goes against something like this, it just folds. And the trend that you're going to notice with this deck is that your opponent just folds or you just fold. Um, like in round 3, for example, I went against my teammate Blake. who also made top 8. He made top 4. But he was playing Eggrow, and this deck just folds to Eggrow. It's less of the item lock one. So they've got the plumes. While Plume obviously does lock your Scarfs, Dews, Seekers, Trick Shovels, Dolls. Like, it seems like it gets rid of everything, but the main problem is actually Burning Shadows Plume. And as you can see, all our attackers are basic, and in theory, if they didn't have the basic Plume, then I could run them eventually. I could run them out of energies because they have no energy acceleration. So I could Flare Grunt, Resource Management, Flare Grunt, and they would, even though they have like Brock's Grit, like you'd probably go to a tie in a best of 1, but in a best of 3, they would have like no way of winning. So do keep that in mind that you just scoop to Eggrow. Like you probably shouldn't even bother playing the matchup. Like there's really nothing you can do about it. I don't know what cards you could add to stop that, other than Garbodor, but that ruins the whole point of the deck. Round 4, I went against a Zorogarb, and I was going to win literally until they dropped Foul Play Zoroark. So if you're like wondering how do you beat this deck, Foul Play Zoroark is definitely one of the ways to go about it. And if your opponent is really good, they might be able to work around Foul Play. Like, I was definitely able to work around Foul Play. But one of the things I noticed about my opponent is, like, even though he had the Foul Play option, and I had to start, one of the problems is that I started Giraffe Rig, so that was kind of a pain. So he was able to get lost me, and he got lost my Life Dew and Faba. And as soon as he did that, I'm like, alright, I'm just gonna tie this game. None of us are gonna win. And it was funny too because he actually, so he looks through my discard pile, and I'm actually thinking, do you even know what to get lost? So sometimes, a lot of the times, your opponent might not even know what to do against this deck. And sometimes when they have the counters, they might not even know how to use them. So that's definitely something to look out for. If you're going to Dallas or any future tournament and you want to play Zorogarb, you can easily tech a Foul Play or an Oranguru. And that'll make things harder for them. But in a best of 3 setting, I don't know how far you're going to go with that. So it's definitely a horrible matchup, and those are the only 2 cards that give you a chance. So I just took the draw because I needed to go 3-1-1 anyways because I scooped a Blake. And it actually worked out in my favor because I would get paired up against someone lower, and that person... See, if I'd won that match, then I would have to seek for the ID, and the chances of me getting the intentional draw were, like, very slim. But my final round was against someone in our local area, and he was running, like, a Zygarde build, which is, it was like, cool because he built it himself, and he definitely tried, but he by the time you get to round 5, you know what everyone's playing. And there was no way he could beat me. And so he just ended up scooping. And it was really one of those matchups where it's like you just know that you can't win. So you just end up scooping. So that was probably the easiest top 8 of my life. And then into Top Cut, I lost to Rob. Due to how Top Cut rules work, whoever's ahead on prizes when sudden death comes. That's just it. So, I mean, when you're going against a stall deck, you know, it's pretty obvious, but you'll watch that video, and there's a lot of good insight in that video that you can definitely look to see how to beat this matchup. like you're not going to go against this often because of the tropical beaches, but it's one of those, if you happen to go against it, you'd like to know how to beat it instead of just being like confused, because I noticed a lot of my opponents were just like confused or just like had no idea what they could possibly do. um so that was my top 8 run. In terms of Dallas, I'm pre-record. This is the Friday, so it's gonna happen tomorrow. Um, I don't know. There's like a lot of weaknesses with the deck. Rob was running Guzzlord, Darkrai EX, and Double Field Blower, so that was really rough. And then if everyone decides to run Eggrow, this is, you just scoop to them. Um, but like everything else looks okay in terms of matchup wise. Um, uh, I can't think of anything else that just this loses to. Um, there's like a lot of big brain things you can do to outplay your opponent. I wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Grant Manley play this list and do well. Um, but I mean, okay, so Field Blower is annoying in the fact that like, don't overextend on your rescue scarfs. You only need to put the one on the active. If you put them all at the same time, then your opponent's just gonna Field Blower. Wait until your opponent has a big hand to Hue. Sometimes you don't even need a Hue. Hue is just like a sneaky tech. You'll find yourself not playing Hue often. You also find yourself not playing Ranger often, but they're just needed. Handiwork and Bryson Man discard. In terms of that, that's all you're really looking for. Like a big combo they can do with the deck is Bellaba and Bryson Man, Trick Shovel, Trick Shovel, Trick Shovel, and then Versus Seeker to get it back. Make sure you Versus Seeker first, and then Impersonation to discard like 9 cards on your opponent's deck. They definitely won't see it coming. If it's necessary, you could also Bunnelby. If your opponent's, like I said, gonna pass, then you just throw up Bunnelby and just burrow, and they have to do something. Whenever you need to use one of these attackers, you slap a life due, and then you get it back, so you never lose a prize. In terms of a challenge, I don't think you might want to play this at a challenge, but at Cups, if you're someone like me, this is a real choice for a Cup. But if you're new, like even if you had the beaches, like assuming you had the beaches and you could play this deck, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, just because it's best of one and not a lot of people are used to that. In terms of a regional, if you've never played a control deck or stall deck at a regional, you're going to blow yourself out and you're going to get really fatigued. So definitely be aware of that. But as I said, I'm used to it. So that's why I like playing. I have fun with these decks and I don't get fatigued as much. Mainly because I think it's just because I have fun with them and I've had so much experience with them. But definitely not for newer players. Yeah, like at least I'm definitely pointing out that. Kind of drawing a blank on what else to really talk about. I don't know how much. Yeah, by the time this comes out, Dallas will be over, and this will probably like get top 8 or something. And I wouldn't be surprised if the list didn't look something like this. I don't know what cards you would change out. the list seems pretty solid. But if you've played something like this or have any, or you know, if you got any suggestions, if you hate this deck, comment down below. How much do you like this deck? Tell us how much in the comments you hate going against this deck, because you'll definitely anger your opponent by playing this. This deck isn't for making friends. You want to win. Definitely a pay-to-win deck, I would say. Definitely because the beaches. If you just excluded the beaches, everything else in the deck is cheap. But other than that, I really got nothing else to say. Other than just like, the only thing we could talk about is like in-depth matchups, but that's like kind of too much. There's just too many like niche situations to go about it. But other than that, the deck's kind of simple, but it's simple but complex. Other than that, if you got any like comments, you want to tell us how much you hate this deck, how much this deck infuriates you. Throw it in the comments below. You can also tell us about how much you hate it. Go on Facebook. We have a Facebook. You can definitely add us and rant about how much you hate this deck. We also got Twitter, where you can go to rant about how horrible this deck is and degenerate and disgusting this deck is. But other than that, this is Evan from Into One to Game. Ariados. Goodbye.